Hello and welcome to Freight Logics Hub podcast, where we discuss the historical developments in freight logistics in Kenya and East Africa. I hope that you have enjoyed our previous episodes, where in the last episode we are interviewing Mr. Samshuddin Kosler and his daughter Zabin Kosler, who are the proprietors of coast hauliers and highway carriers. We have gone quite far on the road journey, but today I want us to go over to shipping, and I'm glad to bring an old friend of mine that I've known for over 35 years, someone who has served this nation in very many capacities, a former managing director of Ocean Freight in Mombasa, and later on served as the Commissioner General of Kenya Revenue Authority. He has also served as an advisor to the Commissioner General of Revenue Authority in Gambia, and currently is one of our directors in the East African Shippers Council. I'm talking about my friend, Mr. John Gerin Msafari. John, I'm glad that you're able to join us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George, for having me. And it's indeed a pleasure to share our journey in the logistics industry.
Indeed, we've known each other for quite a long time.
Yes, it has.
I remember us coming together around about 85 when I came down to set up Signal Freight, and you were at Ocean Freight. And we worked together for a long time in the Kenya Warehousing and Clearing and Warehousing Association. But then you moved on. But before we talk about your career, please give us a bit of your background.
Well, thank you, George. The background is quite long. I come from Taita Taveta County, where I was born quite a number of years back. And went to school in Taita St. Mary's High School, then thereafter to Strathmore College, and finally to the University of Nairobi. And from there, I joined the insurance industry for a brief period. This was the Legal and General Assurance back in 1974. And then thereafter, I moved to Mombasa to join Mitchell Courts Shipping.
Okay. So how long were you in Mitchell Courts?
Mitchell Courts, actually, I was there for 2.5 years, starting as a boarding officer, and then was promoted to a shipping manager. But then I got an interesting invitation from the proprietor of Ocean Freight Shipping. And
this is Waithaka.
Yes, Mr. Livingstone Waithaka. Unfortunately, he passed on in 2018, but I worked with him for 23 years. And at that time, we were the agents of Mediterranean Shipping Company. A very small shipping line then, but currently the largest shipping line in the world.
Indeed, indeed. So from Ocean Freight, at Ocean Freight, what were some of the achievements that you can remember?
Actually, when I was the Ocean Freight, I had the opportunity to be a lecturer in the law of the sea at then Bandari College, currently Bandari Maritime Academy. And thereafter, I became the members of the industry thought it fit to appoint me as a chairperson of the Kenya Ships Agency Association, where I was chairperson from, I think, 1988 up to 1998 when I left the industry to become a tax person.
And at this time, you are going outside the conference, the East African Conference for Shipping.
Yes, at that time, we were outside the East African Conference shipping lines because MSC was, I don't know, I think then it was an independent shipping line. It did not belong to the conference. And it grew through very imaginative ways of handling the customers. And in that, we grew as an agency as well, because at that time we were the agent of MSC. And in the process, Ocean Freight also grew its clearing and forwarding side, which was Ocean Freight Express.
Yeah.
And I moved from Ocean Freight Shipping to Ocean Freight Express, where I was appointed as the managing director. And I don't know whether can I say fortunately or unfortunately, I was appointed as the Commissioner General 6 months later.
Yes.
And it was quite a conversation then with the then Minister for Finance, the late Honorable Simeon Nyachae.
Yes.
He was then Minister for Finance.
And I remember you were spending quite a lot of time visiting the Commissioner of Custom, discussing many issues that concerned us.
Actually, it was quite interesting in the sense that I don't even know how the minister decided that I was the right person there, because at the time, and I always tell my friends this, that when I was appointed as a Commissioner General, the first thing I told the minister, look, I know nothing about tax. In fact, during the time of filing tax returns, my blood pressure would go up. And yet I didn't suffer from normally I didn't have blood pressure, but again, because of what I knew about the income tax department and the customs department, it was a stressful environment. And here now the minister thinks I could help to run the agency.
But we celebrated your appointment because we now knew that we have a representative, someone who understands all about customs clearance, movement of cargo, and that you would now be able to articulate some of the things that you used to articulate on our behalf.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Actually, when I joined the Kenya Revenue Authority, the first thing I did was to speak to the commissioners there and all the senior managers. I said, one thing is we need to understand each other from the very beginning. I know nothing about tax. So please don't imagine that I'm here to come and give you commands, etc., etc. I think we'll work as a team. From having grown our shipping agency from a 2-vessel one to now a major recognized shipping line, then I said, look, I believe I have some reasonable business acumen, and between the taxman and the business, I believe we can make something out of it. Okay. And the good thing at that time was that the compensation that Kenya Revenue Authority was receiving from Treasury was 2% of the taxes collected. So we had a good incentive to collect taxes. Okay. And the good thing is that we are not required to return the funds to Treasury. Okay. It was being used for the development of the agency. And so I said, look, the best thing we can do, let's get together. And one thing we need to also acknowledge is that as a revenue authority, we don't make money. The money is made by the business people. So we need now to facilitate the business people to grow their business. And in the process, we get our revenue. And I remember one time I was meeting business people in Mombasa. And I told them, do you know we are your single largest shipping shareholder? They said, what?
How can you be?
How can you be our shareholder? I said, just think about it. When you do your business and you end up with your net profit, who do you pay first? The taxman. At the rate of 30% of the net profit. So I said, how about the people who actually put the money there, the shareholders who put the risk their money, etc.? How much do you pay them? If they are lucky, maybe 5%.
5%.
So who is the largest shipping order? Shipping
the shareholder.
The shareholder.
The shareholder.
He said, it's the taxman. So if me as a taxman, who has a share in your business, what would I do? To frustrate your business or to support it so that you make more and more money, then I can collect more and more taxes. And that's where, in fact, as a Kenya Revenue Authority, we started the idea of taxpayer education to get them to understand the tax laws, which in my view then were very complex. And I think they still are complex today. So at that time I said, look, we need to get our business people to understand the tax law so they can comply, because our business is not to penalize taxpayers. It was to help them to pay their taxes as easily as possible. And yeah.
I think I remember you used to come down to Mombasa and we had quite a number of meetings. In fact, the training center that was set up in Mombasa after he joined Kere. It served us very well in Kifwa. And many of our members were trained because we are now talking to someone who understood us on the other side.
Indeed, yes. In fact, that's why we even encourage, at that time, the customs training school, which now I think is the KESRA, which is the Kenya's Revenue Administration College. At that time, it was only training tax officers.
Yeah.
But with my background and relationship with the KIFWA and the Ships Association, then we said, look, why don't we admit students from the industry to come and understand the business that we are in, so that we make it easier for them to comply with the law. And of course, if people can comply with the law easily, actually it reduces our cost of administration and therefore expands our margin of the revenue we get from treasury out of the tax collection. And then we can now, improve the facilities in the working area, buying computers, improving the housing where the staff are staying, the vehicles which are, officers required to go and visit taxpayers, assess the tax, etc. So it was a win-win situation.
Talking about computers, I remember that at Signum, by 1992, we had already developed our own in-house customs declaration system, but customs were not accepting our entries simply because we were declaring on a different type of paper, the computer paper, instead of the flimsy paper that was in the law. I know that just before you left Kere, I think you had pushed things quite far to the extent that the Gainde people and all these other people had come. What was your experience moving from the manual clearance, okay, and pushing us now to get to go computerized?
Actually, it was mind-boggling in the sense that, what struck me is, why did we stick here for so long? That relying on the papers being pushed here. Remember, we had the pink copy, the yellow copy, and the white copy distributed from one office to the other. And we're saying when computers came, and we initially started with the Boffin system, then moved now to the Simba system. It's simplified the work so much that actually we could, the officers that we had could now be deployed in more areas to facilitate the trade, facilitate business. And since, from that time now, the automation now increased more and more.
Yes.
And with that, I believe that with even the advance in automation that has reached this far, because now we had the Simba 1 up to Simba 5.
Yes.
Then now we have the ICMS.
Yes.
So I think it has made life much easier. And with more, looking back and now looking forward, I think we need to enhance the automation of systems that we really do not want to find, cargo being delayed in the port because people have to do physical verification, whatever it is. And whereas if that is automated, and of course with the current system of having the authorized economic operator, the AEO, together with the pre-arrival advice, if the systems are automated in such a way that before a ship comes, you already have the manifest, you have the storage plan, both for discharging and the storage for loading, you can have a complete turnaround. And I remember visiting the port of Felixstowe back in 1995, if I'm not wrong, where you found that the containers are to be discharged by the vessel. The vessel sent all the information in advance, and you had trailers being brought into the port, empty ones. And the ones which are for loading, they come full, they are packed there. So you had a continuous discharging and loading to the extent that I remember when I went to visit that port, on that day there was a ship from the then Likes Lines. She was discharging 6,000 containers and loading, I think, 4,000. that gives you about 10,000 containers. Within 8 hours, the ship was out of the port. And there was not a single container in the port because the trailers were being loaded and exiting because the advance manifest was knowing what's the destination. So nothing was being landed in the port.
This is all about pre-arrival processing.
Pre-arrival processing, preparation, and if you did find any container in the port, is when customs have sent advance information that we want to check these 2 containers. They could have some challenges.
I later on visited when I became the managing director of Kenya National Shipping Line.
Yes.
And you know that for a truck that was loaded, getting into the port of Felix 2,
yes,
offloading, and then coming out loaded, it was taking exactly 15 minutes. Back at home, it was days.
A lot of days, and a lot of shifting of containers and cargo, because you find when the ship is discharging, all the containers are stacked together, and now they'll be delivered as and when the owner comes in looking for this container. Now, you can imagine if you are looking for the bottom container and they are stacked 5 high.
Yes.
So you've only paid for 1 container, but the port has to move the 4,
yes,
and they will have to put them on top of another one, so you can get your 1. Now, these 4 are being moved at port convenience, but in moving them, you have the tally officer or the tally supervisor, you have the front loader, you have all this equipment is being used, and there's wear and tear, but with no revenue. Because the revenue is 1 container, but you're moving 4.
Yeah.
When the next person comes, he probably wants a second one from the stack where you put that one. You have to move these ones again. I think there was a time I was doing some maths on this, and I think at that time the port was handling about, I think 1,005, is it 1 million containers? And I took an assumption that out of all those containers being moved through the port, 30% were being subject to these movements.
Yeah.
At that time, I worked out it was costing the country between 5 and 10 billion shillings a year.
And partly because of lack of enough equipment, partly because of slow documentation. Yes. It used to take more than 2 weeks to clear a container. More than 2 weeks to clear a container, and therefore there was a lot of delays and a lot of inconvenience to many people. No wonder the shipping lines were levying a surcharge on the port of Mombasa.
Container surcharge,
yes,
the freight rates are being increased,
yes,
terminal handling charges, all these, the shipping line is attempting to recover their costs through all these extra charges. And of course, all those extra charges translate to increased costs to the importers or exporters, and making the cost of goods in Kenya expensive. And really, there is no reason. And one thing is that I do recall having visited the port of Navashiva when it was, I think, 2 years old.
Okay.
The equipment and the area and the berths were exactly the same as Mombasa. So at that time, the port of Mombasa was handling 350,000 TEUs.
Okay.
Navashiva, which was 2 years old, was handling 1.5 million TEUs. Simply because of systems. Containers that were being discharged, nothing was being landed in the port, was loaded straight into something like we have of the SGR, straight out. Those for New Delhi went to New Delhi. The ones for Mumbai went to Mumbai. Nothing was left in the port.
So in a way to decongest the port, the government came up with the inland container depots. I'm sure you were there.
Actually, I was part of the team that was developing the SOPs of having to move cargo from Kilindini to the Nairobi ICD. And the intention then was to load containers straight from the ship onto the wagon and into Nairobi. And from Nairobi, then there will be customs cleared there and delivered to their respective consignees. But unfortunately, this did not happen. The containers will land on the ground first, then you get the front loader or top loader, and then load them on the wagon. This involves double handling. And again, when the railway line was built, it had to move in. When it's loaded, then move out. It did not go in a circular way that it gets loaded, then it gets exit through another route. Initially, it was supposed to come into Kilindini and then move through the Kipevu outlet, so that the wagons didn't have to move backwards. But unfortunately, the way it was constructed at the time, you find that the empty wagons will be railed in. They get loaded. Then you can't load the next batch until you move out the one which was in there.
Yeah, and I remember, I think the railways had done a good job initially, because when the railways, when the cargo arrived into Nairobi, there were warehouses with railway sidings. And if customs allowed cargo to go inbound, that those cargoes then could go into industrial area, and that would reduce the congestion even at the inland container depot. But unfortunately, I think whenever we have planned things, I think I want to say they use the silo mentality. The people who are developing the inland container depot are so committed to developing it, they don't want to talk to the other parties in the logistics. So that you find then that when we moved on, we now could not even offload some of the cargo that we are taking out of Mbakazi. The cargoes were not able to get to the warehouse to the warehouses as had been done before, and sometimes I think that is the biggest challenge for Kenya. That when we plan things, it is planned in the various departments, but you don't look at the whole logistics wholesomely. So you would find, for instance, when the SGR came, it was completed before people thought of the last mile of that SGR. You are there, and then you're now building that. We are building that last mile, first mile, almost 3 years after you've completed the major project that is supposed to. So what would be your advice if someone was to ask you how our government, and I thank God that we have a new office coming in, and if you are to be asked about infrastructure, logistics infrastructure for Kenya going forward, considering that there's a lot more competition now for the port of Mombasa and the northern corridor coming up from central corridor. We have the LAPSET that is really has not taken over. What would be your advice for those of us who are in this sector as we approach the government? What should we tell them?
I think there requires to be a lot more consultation between the government, the port users, the logistics providers, and to be able to determine when goods arrive, how do they get out of this port? Where do they go? When the exporters are loading their cargo to come to the SGR and into the port, what should they do? What facilities should they have wherever their cargo is coming from to get into the port, and from the port onto the SGR, from the SGR to the port? And this discussion cannot be exclusive to government, because at the end of the day, the government will put the infrastructure, but the business has to use it.
Definitely.
And therefore, that collaboration is important. It may not, I don't think the business people, the private sector, needs to know eventually how much it costs. That's for the taxpayers to know. But as business, you say, how is this going to facilitate our operations? Because again, when you look today in the industrial area, there was absolutely no reason why the warehouses that were built there many years ago are now empty, because the rail was abandoned.
Abandoned. Yeah.
And the cargo arrives at ICD, and yet it is required in this area to the factory areas for production or etc. Now these railway lines are idle or obsolete. I don't know. And that could have been resolved by saying, okay, we're building a new SGR. How many people around here need the cargo directly into their premises? And that could have been factored in, either because I know, yes, it was the MGR and the SGR, but I think if we managed to put the SGR, what took us, what problem was it for us to see, can the SGR go to these warehouses? And instead of now doing the transfers, it's the same challenge that we have now in Naivasha.
Yes.
The cargo comes to the SGR, but we have to transfer to the MGR. That transfer is an additional cost to somebody. Even if the government says we'll absorb this, at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money that's being expended, and it will be recovered somehow.
Yeah, it will deny another project sometime.
Yeah. So I think if that integrated thinking, it's very important. If you remember, I think there's a university now there. We had an ICD in Eldoret.
Yes.
And yet the LCD was required in Malaba or Kisumu. But we had a port in Eldoret. Eventually, it couldn't be used. Simply because I think there was some, parochial interest. People say, no, we must have one here close to my village, etc. But not looking at the total logistic solution.
I used to move petroleum products by rail to Kisumu.
Yes.
So that they could connect by water.
Yes.
Into Jinja.
The rail wagon ferry.
And I think just due to poor PR, one time we loaded those products. We know that they're going to Kisumu.
Yes.
But there has been some exchange between our people and Zamzam in who owned the vessel, the lake vessel.
Yes.
And he just decided to pull out. So we arrived in Kisumu with these wagons.
Yes.
And now we can't get to
Entebbe.
we can't get to Uganda with this guy.
Yes.
We had to bring that cargo back to Nakuru, and then redirect to Malaba. And again, it's just again, we are talking about Africa coming together.
Yes.
We are talking that we are part of the East African community.
Yes.
And all of us want to be in the team, and yet at the same time, I think there are very many vested interests.
Unfortunately, that is the bane of a lot of programs and projects. Because now when you look at the SCFTA, you want to cover the whole of Africa, moving goods from Lamu or from Malindi, the cassava there, or whatever, Bixa from Kwale.
Yes.
We want to move it to Cameroon. First of all, how is it going to go? Is it by road? Or is it by rail? Or by air? If it's by rail, what sort of rail does DRC have, Central African Republic have, Cameroon? Is it the SGR or is it the MGR? That we need to know, so that when we are doing the connections, then they are, they make sense. If you look at the challenge we have now with the SGR, the intention was to bring it all the way to Kampala, into Rwanda, into Burundi, into DRC. Why did it stop at Naivasha? That's a question which I'm not sure if I can answer that question.
Again, then I remember.
Yes.
I visited South Africa
within
the first month when it opened up.
Right.
And paid a lot of visits to the organizations.
Yes.
Including the railways organization in South Africa. And one of the things that they told me was that they are capable of doubling the speed of the meter gauge train.
Yes.
so that we would now be able to deliver at a shorter period. And that was one of their dreams, that when they meet with Kenya,
Yes.
um, that would happen. Eventually, I think we went into partnership with some South Africans.
Yes.
But again, I think one of the biggest problems that we have is, I think I would say, the close working relationship between the industry
Yes.
and the government who sponsors the infrastructure.
Correct.
We find that we only hear that it is being done. We are not so much involved, and in many instances, our experts like yourselves may not get the opportunity to be appointed in some of those boards to be able to articulate on our behalf, okay, what we think about. Think about Kenya National Shipping Line. We have been talking about it.
Well, I think we've been talking about the Kenya National Shipping Line for a long time. Kenya National Shipping Line was the remnant of what we had is the East African National Shipping Line, which involved Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and I can't remember whether Burundi was part of it. But the concept then was to have the National Shipping Line to carry cargo that belongs to the region. But then events changed. The community broke up for whatever reason. I don't wish to go to that direction, but it broke up, and we lost the vision of why it was there in the first place. You can imagine today we are looking at, creating maritime jobs from Bandari Maritime Academy.
Okay.
There's another one coming up in Kwale. But the people who are captains and engineers and what in those vessels, the National Shipping Line,
Okay.
if we had done a bit of forward thinking, there will be the people who are training the engineers who are struggling to put on various vessels across the world. And that would have been now the incentive to revive the East African National Shipping Line. But I think when the community broke, it was very unfortunate because we lost track of what really we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
And the growth of the Kenya National Shipping Line has been inhibited by the fact that it now became dependent on the goodwill of the international shipping lines. And, if you consider that each one of those is doing their own personal interest, they will consider themselves first before they look at the National Shipping Line.
Definitely.
And I think with the SFTA coming up, I think the idea of the National Shipping Line is not completely dead. It can be revived, but people have to sit down, think about it on a 360-degree level, not at country level or like the ESC level, but is Africa-based. And I believe that when you look at the combined resources of the African countries, they can start their own shipping lines.
Definitely.
All right?
Definitely.
And when you look at the flagging of vessels, in a country like Liberia, I think they have almost half of the international fleet flying under its flag.
Yes.
And yet, maybe, I don't know how many Liberian vessels are there, but again, it's an opportunity for Kenya and East Africa, for that matter, to have the flagging process done with the collaboration of the likes of Kenya Maritime Authority, the State Department for Blue Economy, etc. Those putting our minds together and see how can we develop this, particularly when we want to expand, grow the SFTA and expand it. And this requires some, conversation between the government and the various players.
I think that would take me to East African Shippers Council. I remember when we started the Kenya Shippers Council. You were the first chairman. You handed over to me.
Yes.
At that time, what we wanted was to be able to have a voice, even to negotiate with the shipping lines for rates that are commensurate with the volumes that we are handling. But there's a background in that over the years, the Kenyan importers had always been made to think that if you want a quotation, let it be CIF from Mombasa, so that so that you don't have to worry with the freight. Okay, you don't have to worry with the exportation from the other side, and in that sense, I think we handed over almost our sovereignty over our cargo to the exporters from the other side. And on the other hand, when we are doing exports, okay, again, we are selling FOB. And then we are going to buy back that coffee. It's going to come back here having been processed in Switzerland, okay? Again, we are going to buy it CIF. What do we tell our traders about
I think
Incoterms and everything else?
I think it's not a lost battle yet. Because if you consider, we've been able to pass regulations which say that all insurance of Kenya of goods destined to Kenya must be underwritten locally. It's happening.
Okay.
Now, freight, insurance is part of freight.
Yes.
So it's a question of us sitting down and discussing with the likes of the Shippers Council of Eastern Africa, Kenya Maritime Authority, and say, look, we need to do something like this.
Yeah.
Remember, yes, because of some vested interests, remember we had the legislation, I think it was Section 16 of the Kenya Maritime Authority Act, which required that there is no vertical integration. The vertical integration has its own advantages, but in terms of putting efficiency, but there's nothing to stop efficiency being required of every single player in the logistics chain, right? The fact that today the shipping lines own the transport, they own the shipping agencies, they own the clearing and forwarding agencies. Now, how transparent can that be? In as much as they will say, yes, it becomes easy to manage the cost, but have freight rates really gone down?
No.
Have clearing charges really gone down?
Not really.
Hardly.
No.
The push is always for KPA to reduce its rates. But who is telling the shipping lines, you need to reduce your rates? I think we need in the industry, which I think KMA, that's why it was set to be the industry regulator, in the likelihood of the Federal Maritime Commission of the US.
Okay.
They can call the shipping lines to order. If they're behaving in a cartel manner, they need to be, called to account.
Do you think we are succeeding?
Not yet. I don't think we are. But it's not a lost battle, like I said.
But do we really? I think one of my concerns is that really we do not have the voice, because we are scattered. Okay, I think there's too much competition between us as importers, between us as clearing and forwarding agents, that you can agree on a rate today, and by the time we leave here, someone is undercutting it. I used to have that experience in transport. That KTA has agreed on rates, but other transporters, members, are calling me and saying, Mr. Kenda, I'll give you 50 below.
Okay, I think we have a couple of challenges there, in the sense that, we have the competition authority. We're not supposed to sort of work like a cartel, where we agree the rate is $10 and everybody charges the same, regardless of the quality of service you're giving. Okay. So it's a question which we need to sit and discuss, because I remember we had these challenges back then. I think, I can't remember which year that was, when I was, in fact, the only person who was the chairperson of the clearing and forwarding agencies and the chairperson of Kenya Ships Association. At that time, we looked like we were at war with each other, and yet we were rendering a service to the same client, either it's importer or exporter. And when I became chair of those two agencies, we were able to sit down with the KPA and agree a position whereby the quality of service then was commensurate with the charges that were being given.
Okay.
And we did have a voice in the port. We used to have the Port Advisory and the Productivity Council, where they were clearing agents, ships agents, etc. And I think we're able to articulate what the requirements of our customers, who are the importers and exporters. And I think that is what also birthed the Kenya Shippers Council, which now morphed into, with the support of the Kenya Social Manufacturers, to become the Shippers Council of Eastern Africa.
Yes.
Which has, all the members of the Eastern community are members there. And they have got the country councils, but they are members of the entire organization. And I think we have had some, as a Shippers Council, we have had some good interactions with the various state departments where issues are being articulated and they are agreed. You have the Kentrade, you have Kenya Bureau of Standards, you have KEFIS, and all those who take into account the challenges the industry is having, and we ask them to look at them. But I think we can bring it to another level.
Yes.
If we work, in concert with each other. Yes.
So I want you to look forward in the future. Again, we're going back to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Yes.
We are going back to East African Community and COMESA.
Yes.
All these things are coming down, and we are talking of Africa becoming one big nation, one big free market, okay?
Yes.
The largest in the universe, with the fastest growing middle class, okay? With a lot of potential for agriculture, for mining, and everything else.
Yes.
But I think there will still be competition, even as it opens up. And I'm a bit concerned about how we as Kenya are going to fare there, because I see that the Central Corridor seems to be moving faster than us in the Northern Corridor. I see that in Uganda, there's already the Gulu Logistics Hub. I see that in paper, Uganda is also working on a port that if they move their cargo through the Central Corridor, it will be a much more efficient route to get into the hinterland of Africa. How do you see Kenya reclaiming its position, okay, in this new climate, okay, where we have projects that have been started and are somehow left hanging? We have, of course, as we said, the SGR somewhere in the middle of the country. We have the LAPSET and all these things, and our neighbors around us, even Ethiopia, is trying to take that. What is there for us?
I think back in 2015, I made a presentation in Naivasha, which was being, I think, organized by the State Department for the Blue Economy. And I did make a case then for an integrated maritime policy for the country. Okay. And in that policy, I did suggest that it was not a matter for State Department for Blue Economy alone. Actually, I did scan the environment and saw that the integrated maritime policy involves no less than 19 ministries, all requiring to work together to see, can we make Mombasa, Kenya, as the optimum hub to render services to the importers and exporters? Because, and at that time, I did warn that we needed to scan the environment. One of the things I said was, Ethiopia was resolving its issues with Eritrea.
Yes.
I think there was the DP World wanted to work with Somaliland.
Yes.
Now, those two areas, actually, those things did materialize. I was talking about 2015. At that time, Ethiopia had not started the SGR.
Okay.
They built an electric SGR
Okay.
from Addis Ababa to Djibouti. Our SGR had not even reached Nairobi yet. And we are the ones who started the subject. Again, because I don't know whatever reasons were there. And I think if we don't get ourselves seriously into this matter, we'll find the central corridor will be the go-to corridor as opposed to the northern corridor. And the LAPSET, again, will be a nice, beautiful real estate if we don't put our minds together and work as one team. Because we cannot have the parochial interests here, there, whatever it is, forgetting what's the big picture. And if you are looking at the continental free trade area, we need to sort out all those issues. Because today, the electric train from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma is taking 4 hours. Right? Before that, it wasn't much longer. We need to get that, and very, very fast, because nobody is waiting for us. We have to get this. And again, when we talk about the blue economy, it's not about fishing. The blue economy is much bigger than that. Much bigger than that.
Yes.
Like I said, it's getting involved 19 ministries. When you talk about the Navy protecting our SEZ, that is the security. If you're looking at taking care of our coral, that is environment. If you're talking about managing our rivers up and down, that is water. If you're looking at trade itself, that is another ministry that is involved. If you're fishing, of course, you have now the fisheries, fisheries department. But then you have agriculture, because if you are going to promote our exports, because where do we get our foreign exchange from? Exports. So we need to support agriculture. The person who is growing his cotton in Kisumu, what does the port of Mombasa mean to him? The person who is growing the potatoes in Nyandarua, what does the port of Mombasa mean to him or her? And all these are integrated. And when you look at our agriculture that we had in days gone by, Kenya was the single largest producer of the top quality coffee that was being used worldwide to blend the others. Uganda, Venezuela, all those ones.
Even our tea.
Our tea, similarly. But look at our tea production today. What did we do? We converted all our tea farms and coffee farms into real estate. And yet we had other areas which could be used for real estate. The only thing we need to do what? Transport infrastructure. Because if somebody can move from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma in 4 hours, why can't you have your house in Syokimau, or even Emali, and you are working in Nairobi? Because you can come very fast with the SGR, whatever it is, electric. So what we did with our environment here in Nairobi and all the farms in Kiambu, in Nyandarua, and whatever it is, it was a big disservice to this economy.
No, we can talk for a very long time. There's still much more that we'd want to discuss.
Yes.
I think my take from your last remarks is consistency in policy implementation.
Yes.
We have a lot of good policies in this country.
Indeed we do.
But it is like every time there's a new government, there's a new policy. What we had started is never finished by the next government, as it were. There's the tendency to look for new projects rather than complete projects. And that is hindering logistics in our country, because I believe that there's much more that the railways can still do, even with the warehouses that they have, to help in distribution in this country. and also to bring the services closer to the people, because those railway stations were serving those people for decades.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
and I'm
Yes.
sure they would still want to be served. I want to thank you for coming, and I'm sure that we are going to have another session, maybe in a deeper discussions on some of the areas where you've served this nation. You're still to tell us more about customs and the achievements that we have and which way we would want to go. But we are still also talking about industries, the setting up of industries. The government used to have a policy that if you are setting up in the rural areas, there were some tax exemptions. We have gone into counties. Are we enjoying those tax exemptions to attract investment in those regional areas or not? I think we'll be able to talk about this more, but for now, I just want to thank you again for finding time to talk to us here at Freight Logics Hub, and I look forward to that time. Thank you, viewer, for being with us in this first episode with Mr. John Gerin Msafari, a dear friend of mine that we have worked with in many areas and who has served this nation very widely. Thank you, and look forward to the next episode. Bye.